Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, baby, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Whew, man, got it out of the way already. Good morning, my friends. Hello. How are you? A little bit warmer this morning, still a little crispy out here in the old Matsu Valley as we get ready to crank along on this Hump Day show, the Wednesday edition of the Michael Dukes Show. Downhill slide. We can see all the way to Firearms Friday from here, and it's looking pretty good. Looking pretty good, I gotta tell you. Oh, man, I'm excited about it. But we're making our way through the week and getting things ready, and we are going to hit this hard and be and today's a good show. Today is going to be a whiz-bang show. We're going to be joined in hour 2 by State Senator Mike Shower for the Shower Hour of Power. And then in hour 1 here, in just a moment, we're going to be joined by Representative Kevin McCabe, who is the representative. So these are my legislators, the two people that represent me and my family in the legislature. So it's a personal conversation with me and my legislators. It should be fun and fantastic. Now, before I bring Kevin on, and I know he's going to be waiting in the wings here in a second, before I bring Kevin on, I did want to comment on one thing that happened yesterday, just because I gotta comment on it. All right. Thank you, Rob, by the way. And I'll also talk about the tax cap here in a second. Rob's going to give me some details here on the actual numbers, because that was the thing I forgot to pull this morning before we got started. We'll talk about that in Fairbanks here real quick. But before we get into it, I just want to throw this out there because it's going to be a big deal, and I'm sure we'll talk about it with Kevin, but I have just a few comments, and I don't want to wipe off any stain on Kevin with my comments before I bring him on the program, because I'm just absolutely agog. I'm agog at this point. So yesterday there was a confirmation hearing for a bunch of appointees, including 2 members of the Board of Education and to the Board of Game or Fish. I'm sorry, maybe it was Fish. Picaro, who was he was on the Commercial Fisheries Commission, is what he was entered onto. And he lost on a 30-30 vote. He needed 31 to be bumped over. Now, he's a longtime GOP advocate and talk show host. So, it's just interesting to see that they don't like talk show hosts down there in the Capitol. But what really got me was Bob Griffin, who's been a guest on this program now a couple times, education advocate, and has served on the Board of Education for 5 years, was, well, I would say pretty handily attacked. He was kind of savaged in this meeting. Senator Loki Tobin took the bully pulpit. She's the chair of the Senate Education Committee, and proceeded to beat the hell out of Bob Griffin from the podium, and just assassinate his character all over the place. And I mean, things like totally misinforming people. She accused him of saying women can't dunk. This was in regards to the context of defending girls' sports from the transgender takeover. That didn't happen. He did say that the number of dunks in the NBA were less than the dunks, in the WNBA were less than the dunks in the NBA by a significant margin. Like 33 dunks over the entire history of the WNBA, and 169,000 dunks in just the last 20 years of the NBA. So, I mean, so he didn't say women can't dunk. He did say that he also, I mean, it just, she accused him of representing himself as a member of the Department of Education and Early Development, something that didn't happen. What did happen was that there was an error in the minutes of a meeting where apparently they represented him in the minutes as a member, and that wasn't what he said. I mean, just all kinds of just fallacious and attack dog kind of, mean girl stuff, right? She also told lawmakers that Griffin, quote, used his position for personal and professional gain using data he produced to promote misinformation in public meetings. Now, all the stuff, Bob sent me a bunch of stuff when we've done the last two shows, and the stuff is all footnoted. This is not stuff that he just pulled out of his backside. This is stuff that's footnoted, right? Oh, but they just don't like it. They just don't like it. And finally, the most ridiculous comment that she made was that she said during his tenure on the board, that Griffin, quote, allowed for unconstitutional spending of public dollars, unquote. When did he get such authority? When was he allowed to do any of that stuff? Right? I mean, he allowed it. The fact is that Loki Tobin and company just don't like Bob because he's telling them what they don't want to hear. That's the problem. The worst part is that the people who voted against him, there was a ton of Republicans. There were, of course, all the Republicans pretty much in the Senate majority voted against him, including Giesel, Bjorkman, Bishop, Merrick, Stedman, and Stevens, which left Kaufman and Wilson aside from the minority. But on the House side, Julie Colomb, Will Stapp, Louise Stutz, Jesse Sumner, and Stanley Wright all voted against him. And interestingly enough, in the ADN, they when asked about their vote, they all refused to answer. They just refused. And Thomas Baker of Kotzebue walked away without saying a word when asked by the ADN reporter about his position. So they don't have any answers for you. They don't want to respond. They don't want to take a stand. They don't want to explain themselves to the public. So, I mean, I guess just remember those names in the thing. I mean, what? I mean, what is going on? I'm just asking, what is going on? These Republicans who just, and Thomas Baker. All right. Anyway, Bob Griffin is not, he is bent yet unbroken. He said, I was a fighter pilot for 22 years. I've had better ass chewings by people than these. So, hey, there you go. I'm all about that. Some of the people did have some things to say on that. Some people did come out and speak against it, including my guest today, Representative Kevin McCabe, joins us this morning to discuss this and more. He joins us right now. Good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm tired, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing good. I feel your pain this morning. Well, you saw, because I think my last text to you last night was at something like 10:30 p.m. And I'm just like, oof, man, 4:30 comes a little early this morning. Anyway, I definitely feel it. I know you guys have been working hard down there, and I appreciate it. All right. So, I mean, should we just take on the obvious here to begin with before we get into the rest of the session discussion here? We've got about 6 or 7 minutes. Can we talk about this confirmation process and the absolute, I mean, talk about misinformation. Loki Tobin saying, oh, he's offering misinformation. It's basically la, 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 la. We don't want to hear what you have to say because we don't agree with it. That's a pretty crazy position, in my opinion.
Right. Well, you probably heard what I said. It's it's unfortunate that Senator Tobin had to go down the same path as Ivy Sponholz did years ago with Judge Johnston on the Board of Fish. And, it's frustrating to me, the departure from the truth that often happens on the floor, because we're constitutionally protected from things that we say. And, it's a good majority of what was relayed yesterday from her and others was not the truth, or it was a mischaracterization of the truth, or a half truth, or, sort of dancing around the edges. But yeah, I totally agree. Bob Griffin, we need his voice. And I plan to talk to him today, or call him today if I can, if he's not on a trip, and, ask him to stay engaged. It's kind of unfortunate that as well. So, Representative Eastman wrote a little blurb underneath one of Must Read Alaska's stories about how because several of us voted against his reconsideration, just in the effort to move things along, that we voted against Griffin. And none of that's true. I mean, Griffin lost by 10 points or 10 votes. A rescind action on the amendment and a revote is typically done when there's 1 or 2 votes, like you saw with Picaro. He initially won by 1 vote, and then you rescind action. You go talk to some folks and try to figure things out and see if you can change their votes. That's what a rescind action is for. It's not to try to put conservatives on the record and delay the proceedings and any of the other number of things that Eastman did. So, I voted initially for Bob Griffin, and I voted against rescinding action because I didn't think he had a prayer of, and I hadn't seen Eastman talking to anybody and trying to change their votes. So, we had a very long day ahead of us, and in an effort to move us along, several of us, 3 of us, I think, voted to rescind action. And I'm not so sure. I didn't watch Baker's vote that carefully. So I don't know how he voted in the initial round, but I do know that he voted with us not to rescind action.
Right. He voted in the initial round. He was a no vote. He was a no vote and in fact, that was one of the ones that was missed by Must Read because they got a picture of the big board in the ADN vote, and he voted against the confirmation of Griffin, which again, I just don't understand. I mean, here's a guy that was, like I said, when he sent me notes of what he wanted to talk about on the program, they were all footnoted. I mean, he had sources, he had everything else. This was not stuff that he's like coming up with in his mom's basement. I mean, this is information that's available out there. And yet Tobin, and this is the worst thing, is the character assassination from the bully pulpit, because Bob Griffin cannot respond. He has no way to respond to what's being said. They could say he dances around naked in the streets in polka dot, panties, and he couldn't say a thing. And it's just kind of, it's not only disingenuous, it's disturbing that somebody from a leadership position can do something like that.
Right. That's frustrating. And truthfully, Bob's position is not paid. It's strictly volunteer, and he does work his tail off. And he has sent me probably the same stuff he sent you, and I've read through it all, and I find it to be credible. And even the stuff that he sends us is footnoted to studies and everything else. So, I mean, the data is there, unless you want to just bury your head in the sand and plug your ears and scream, no, 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 no. That was my point, is Bob Griffin is an important voice on that board, because he does do the research and he has the opposing data. And I think that unless we just want a bunch of yes men on the board rubber stamping the NEA ideas and the Alaska school administrators and school boards ideas for BSA and all that, it frustrates me. Bob, I thought, was a valuable person on that board. So
now you said during your comments that you talked about having a balanced board. And you said, do you want every single board to say only what we want to say? I mean, only what we want to hear, essentially. Give me a 60-second synopsis of your comments on that specifically before we go to break here.
Well, sure. We have all sorts of people on that board, and I get, Representative Himshoot stood up and said, well, there's some requirements for various Democrats and Republicans on the board, and yeah. But so what? I mean, you can have a loud conservative Democrat, as well as a very loud liberal Republican. So it's not really about the party. It's about who's doing the research and the opposition research to provide the, a counterbalance and sort of a tension between the members of the board. That's how the best decisions are made. That's how the best decisions are made in business. You don't want a whole bunch of yes men. You want somebody that's going to say, well, hey, boss, have you thought about this? Or, hey, members of the board, have you thought about this? And that's the most frustrating thing, is we're trying to make the board homogenous, but homogenous on the left, not in the center, and it's
right. If it was all filled with liberal talking heads who all parroted the points of the NEA or the education industry as a whole, then that would be fine. Oh, just let it sail through, no problem there. And if any Republican got up and said the things that Loki Tobin got up and said, it would be a point of order. They would be called for attacking the. I mean, it was, it's this double standard, this ridiculousness that we see in this kind of situation where the conservative voice is being crushed further and further down, all in the name of tolerance and equality, which is kind of weird since there's no tolerance or equity or equality in any of those things. All right, Kevin McCabe. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more in just a moment.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
All right, Kevin McCabe is our guest here on the program. David said, what is this Slim Gorgeous moniker? Those are his pronouns. Do you not know that, David? Those are his pronouns. It's not he, him. It's Slim and Gorgeous. And so that's what we like to see around here. It's a little tongue-in-cheek. Just get used to it. It'll be going on. I don't want to belabor the point too much here, Kevin, but these confirmation hearings are just... and you mentioned it. You mentioned Ivy Sponholtz in the previous one, where, I mean, the fangs and the claws just come out, and it's just it becomes a personal attack on the appointees. I mean, these are people that, for the most part, most of these board positions are unpaid positions, people just volunteering their time and effort to deal with these issues. And yet these people act like you're, getting a $500,000 a year job to make money. I mean, even one of the comments was that he was enriching himself, used the position for personal and professional gain. I mean, this kind of commentary. And I'm just thinking, it's a volunteer. It makes no sense, yet nobody really says anything about it. It's all, okay, yeah, nod. They all get in their chairs. They all nod. It's crazy.
Right, and he's somehow responsible for black mold in the schools and the toilets that don't flush and leaky roofs and all of that. I guess he's personally supposed to take that entire weight on his shoulders.
It's the ad hominem straw man attacks, right? She's got the bully pulpit. He cannot respond. She could throw everything in the kitchen sink at him, besmirch him, tell people that he murders puppies in the street and everything else, and nobody can say anything about it. It's disgusting, quite honestly.
Yeah, I don't much like that process, but I will tell you, Bob Griffin was down here several times talking about SB 140, and he was down here talking about his confirmation, went into many offices. But I was a little frustrated that the governor's the guy that runs the boards and commissions wasn't more proactive with us. On Procaro especially, but Bob Griffin as well, and Tyndall. I didn't know much about Barbara Tyndall, but from everything I heard from all my colleagues, she is a really good choice, regardless of Senator Tobin stood up and sort of accused her of being just a religious school only teacher. Nothing could be further from the truth. So I'm a little unclear, that the whole separation of church and state thing has become so convoluted in their minds, as well as other things in our, as well as many other things in our Constitution that just aren't there. Like the state constitution doesn't say that we have to adequately fund education. It just says we have to establish and maintain. I guess if you think maintain means fund it, that's fine, but the boroughs could fund it, the parents could fund it. I mean, there's a number of ways it could be funded. It doesn't necessarily have to come from the legislature.
Right. No, her comment on Tyndall, and I should have brought this up while we were on the air, but she said she opposed Tyndall because Tyndall spent her career teaching and working in religious schools, which the state does not oversee. How does that make her unqualified as a teacher for however many years she's been at, whether she was in religious institutions, religious schools, or regular schools? It's a board of education. It's there about education. Or is it only about state-sponsored education? It's only about kowtowing to the state. I mean, again, Tobin is not a very nice person. So
it's frustrating.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Right.
We're going to jump back in here. We're about 35 seconds out here from rejoining the radio. Kevin McCabe is our guest. Senator Tobin accused Bob Griffin of lobbying as a board member. Why doesn't she accuse school board members of lobbying in Juneau with state funds and local taxpayer money? Well, there you go. That's another question.
Or the high school kids that they brought with them.
Yeah, exactly. All on the state's nickel. Have a nice day. Your money out there begging for more of your money. That's the conundrum we're talking about. All right, Kevin McCabe is our guest. We're going to continue here, the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's do this thing. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back. The Michael Duke Show. Kevin McCabe is our guest, representative from Big Lake, representing my chunk of the Mat-Su out here. I kind of like this is my day to visit with my own legislators to see what they're doing and get a report card and find out what's happening. All right, let's continue on, Kevin. We've kind of hammered the whole confirmation process, but we're in the final days. We're in the final days here of the session. So do you want to recap overall, how you think the session has gone? I don't know if you want to give it a letter grade or not, but where do you, as you look at what's happened, some of the balancing acts that's been done, some of the defections from the majority on certain votes or things like that, and overall, do you want to kind of give us a score of where you think the session fell so far as we come down to the final couple weeks here?
Oh, well, I would say we all get an F. I mean, we're all trying as hard as we can, but it's frustrating. In many cases, statesmanship and rhetoric and debate and what do you call it? The logic, rhetoric, and
logic, rhetoric, and reason. The triumvirate. Yeah, that's the Socratic triumvirate of logic, rhetoric, and reason.
Right. But on top of that is trust. You have to trust that the person that's talking to you is telling you the truth. And, frankly, that's why things happen on the floor sometimes, is because we don't trust. We get an amendment put on our desk. I don't know if you watch us at all, but oftentimes a bill will come up in second reading, and is, just before it comes up in second reading or the bill comes up, the pages will start distributing amendments. And many times from certain legislators, it's the first time we've seen the amendment. Now, the legislators that care and that we trust are the ones that bring an amendment around and say, hey, I have this amendment to your bill that's on the floor in 2 days, Kevin. Do you want, can I go through it with you? Do you want to see what I'm trying to do? And then as the bill author, I can stand up and support or not support the amendment. And I'll usually tell the guy after we explain it, well, I don't, or girl, I don't support that, or I do support that. the ones that are just trying to do the play the niggy sob game, if you know what that is, or to play the now I got you game, they have their amendments distributed at the same time we see the bill on the floor in seconds. So we have about 5-10 minutes to read through the amendment, and then we have to trust that when he reads the amendment and then when he describes his amendment, that he's telling the truth, that there's nothing hidden in there. That's why you see us complain so much about we have a 3-page bill and we'll have an 18-page amendment from some folks. And how do we read an 18-page amendment? Because oftentimes it'll say on line 13 of page 4, remove this word and insert this sentence. That's how the amendments come to us, and we're expected, and we really try, but we depend a lot on each other, and we try to trust each other that what we're hearing from the maker of the amendment is actually the truth. And so often it's not, or it's a half truth. And that's why a lot of, in one particular member, why his amendments are voted down almost without even looking at them, because there's no trust there.
Right.
And that's part of the problem with with all the debate and with the statesmanship is maybe it's at this stage of the game we're a little bit wary of each other. We don't kind of trust.
It's not statesmanship, it's gamesmanship. That's what it is. It's gaming, it's the system. It's trying to score some kind of political point instead of actually wanting to work together for a common goal.
Right.
And like you said, I mean, whenever I was going to make an amendment to a piece of legislation in the assembly, if it was something that didn't just come to me on the floor during discussion, then I would contact the maker of the ordinance or whatever and say, hey, this is what I'd like to do. Can we? I mean, that makes sense. Why wouldn't you, do that and say, just a heads up, here's what I'm bringing to the table kind of thing.
Right.
It makes no sense to just call all this stuff out at the last minute. I mean, and especially if these are the same kind of people that are complaining about the previous majority when they would substitute a whole bill at the last minute and give you 30 minutes to read it and figure it out and then make you vote on it. I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever.
Right. And that's happening right now. I mean, we're getting so close to the end. People are looking for bills that have come over from the Senate that all we would have to do is vote through as a place to stuff their particular bills, especially if it's a small bill. That's what happened with my license plate bill, frankly, a couple of years ago, is at the 11:45 at night, on the very last night, Senator Hughes called me and said, hey, we have this Representative Schrage bill on license plate or license signatures. Be a good place to put your license plate bill if you want to get it done. And they're both two small bills, and we can put them down, or we can put them together. And so that's what we did, and that's kind of how that passed. So.
Yeah, no, it's frustrating. So you give the whole process so far in this session as an F. Any wins that you could see? I mean, coming back, looking back and say, okay, we kind of overall, it was kind of a horrible thing, but any positives, any rays of sunshine in this?
There's a few coming up. I personally have some legislation that's in the Senate ready to, it's in Senate Finance. There's a resolution on Port McKenzie. We'll have HB 122, which is that'll be on the floor today, which is the Railroad Bonding Authority. And there's an insurance bill, HB 29 of mine, that's going to pass out of Senate Judiciary probably today and go to the floor. So there's a few of those that are coming up, and we haven't passed many bills this year, but as they, we're kind of compressing now, the whole time compression thing, and both sides are playing that game. But I think you'll see some decent legislation come out. I'm still not sure about the budget, the operating budget. The conference committees are almost done. The capital budget will be on the floor for amendments on the House floor today. So we'll see how that looks. I'm hopeful that there's going to be some wins. The big elephant in the room, of course, is Cook Inlet Energy, and that may take a special session. I don't know. I'm starting to hear rumblings of that. If we can't get it through right now, the problem is any kind of Cook Inlet legislation right now. Everybody knows that the governor wants to see it, and that the majority on both sides want to see it. So they're all trying to put their they're bills that maybe nobody wants to see into that same legislation in the hopes that their
Right.
bills will be a tag along and pass, you know.
Well, and this is the danger, of course, of doing all this at the end of the session. You and I have talked many times about time compression as a weapon. Now they create an omnibus bill that's full of bad ideas. I mean, may have one good amongst a whole handful of bad ideas, and yet they're going to put it all into put it all into one big omnibus bill and try and force it down somebody's throats because they must do something. I mean, we've been talking about this obviously with Brad for a while, but this idea that somehow the legislature can save the Cook Inlet gas production and everything else. I mean, again, I'll say what I said on Tuesday, which is if it's 3 times as expensive or even twice as expensive to get Alaska gas in there versus just importing it now and working on a longer term solution, why are we messing with it? Why shouldn't we just set the import up, get that plan rolling so that we know that we're covered, and then we've got time to fix it in the future?
Right. Lots of that going on. And of course, there are certain legislators that are trying to get access to Hill Corp's records. So that keeps getting stuffed in. I know you've read about that, but it gets stuffed into every single bill. And, if we want to change the S Corp laws in Alaska, we should just change the S Corp laws. That's kind of just the way it is. We shouldn't single out one S Corp that we frankly invited in here into the state 10 years ago to help us solve what we saw then was a declining Cook Inlet production. And Hill Corp has done an amazing job at that. And now they're telling us that there is an issue again and that they may not be able to fill that issue. And we're saying, well, but yeah, you need to show us how much you've made. Well, that wasn't the deal we made when we invited them in. So that's a little frustrating to see that roadblock, if you will, in the Cook Inlet energy bills.
Right. Well, and like you said, if you're going to change it, change it. If it's going to be an S Corp thing, change it to an S Corp thing. I'm not opposed to that. I'm also not opposed to seeing some of that, there to be some equity in the oil production field, that everybody is kind of on the same playing field. But if you're going to do it for S Corps, do it for all S Corps. That's
right.
kind of how it should. You shouldn't single out something like that in that regard. It's pretty crazy. We're coming up on the break, Kevin. Any final thoughts on good things that happened so far before we get into the final wrap up in the next segment for the last 10 days or so here?
Well, yeah, I would say there are some good things on the horizon. I think that the whole world, but Alaska and the U.S. are recognizing that we're going to need coal, and we're going to need clean Usabelli coal. And so that's kind of been my focus. I'm leaving the gas and oil stuff to people that are, more involved and smarter than me. Tom McKay and his group and his staff, they're heavily involved in that, as well as Representative Rauscher. So those guys are focused on that. I'm focused on what happens afterwards. What happens 10 years from now when the gas actually does become even more scarce? What do we do? And we have 3,000 years of coal between Usabelli and West Susitna, and we have proven that you can actually reduce the emissions on a coal plant to virtually nothing. And so why don't we use that? Coal is not a dirty word, and we'd use that for electricity, save the natural gas for heat, and we could sort of be sitting in a really good position. And of course, the railroad is a big focus of mine, as you probably know. So those are things that I'm encouraged by, if you will.
Right. All right. Well, Kevin McCabe is our guest. We're going to continue here in just a moment. One final segment, and we will talk about the final days of session and what Kevin sees coming on the horizon. The Michael Duke Show continues. Mike Shower coming up in hour 2 of the program. And we'll continue in just a moment. Back with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we are in the break right now with Kevin McCabe, and you mentioned the coal thing, and so I do want to touch on that just for briefly here. I'm going to actually give the floor to Kevin for a second. I have to run. My phone slipped off the charger last night. It had a 1% charge this morning, and I got to have Mike Shower on here in a minute, so I'm going to run and grab it. But coal, coal in Alaska, we have huge supplies. It is some of the cleanest coal in the world. And as you mentioned, we've got the technology to make this stuff really work well. So, Kevin, give us a little minute and a half symposium here on the idea of using coal to heat, electrified, generate power and everything else, and what we could be doing rather than focusing on some of the things that we're focusing on now.
Sure. Well, our coal in Alaska is especially in Healy area, and the coal in West Susitna area is subbituminous C, I believe, and it's got less than 0.2% sulfur, which makes it a very clean coal. And it's the kind of coal that you burn for a power plant. It's not the kind of coal that you need for making steel, say. And so we have that available to us, and they've been using it. Golden Valley has Healy 2, which is the serial number 1 of the clean coal technology, and it's had some struggles and some issues, but they haven't really been focused on it, especially since President Obama announced that coal was a dirty word. And so I'm hopeful that they can focus on fixing Healy 2 to the point that it actually works, that it becomes a viable alternative. I think it's a 68 meg power plant, and or alternatively, tear down 3 walls and build a new coal plant, and then you don't have to do a new EPA statement. You can do a update because you're remodeling. So I think that our focus has been in the wrong place. I've said this in many, many meetings, that if we're going to focus on the long term, we need to focus on what we know we have for the long term. I think there's a company that's interested in doing a coal plant at the top of West Sioux, sort of north of Mount Susitna. And, they claim there's 3,000 years of coal available to power a 1 meg or a 1 gig power plant, or however big it is, to power the rail belt in South Central. And 3,000 years of coal, why aren't we focused on that? We can do it clean now.
Right. It's there. Why not use it? And this has been my whole premise with this whole, energy crisis in the inlet, is that it's a crisis, yes, but it's a fixable crisis. Like I said, we keep looking to these short-term fixes where the state gives all the money, gives away the royalties, does the things, does all this stuff, but it's all short-term because, again, what happens when the inlet runs out of its next gas pocket in 10 years? We should set up the import to have it available and then look at a longer-term solution for, once we have the imports coming in and we know that there's no more crisis. But again, if the crisis isn't there, they can't get things done, right? They can't let the crisis go to waste. And we could be looking at things like coal or alternatives or, some new exploration of LNG if we had the pressure off from the immediate, we're going to run out tomorrow kind of thing.
Right. There's a really good book out there called The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels by a guy named Alex Epstein. And it's just an amazing book that says, if you really look at it, we demonize fossil fuels. But if you really look at it, fossil fuels are why we are where we are today. I had a long conversation with Mayor Putkatuk several years ago when he was down here as a representative. And he said, Kevin, we love oil on the North Slope because before the discovery of oil, our life expectancy of the natives on the North Slope was X, but I believe it was below 60, like close to 50 years old. He said, now that we have money and oil flowing and we have a way to, sort of upgrade our lifestyle with warm, hot, houses, and we don't have to burn wood. We have heat, and we can bring in, good food. He said our life expectancy is up there with the rest of the world. So that's a sort of a micro look at what oil and fossil fuels have done for Alaska Natives on the North Slope,
Right. Well, and again, with the technology being there where we can we can make it so that the consumption of coal is ecologically more friendly and cleaner. I don't know why other than it's just a bad word. That coal
Right.
is just a bad word. And
Right.
this goes back to the whole thing with Tobin, where they just don't want to hear anything else. They don't want to hear whatever, if it doesn't align or jibe with their belief system, then it's evil or something.
Right.
All right, Kevin McCabe, our guest. We're going to jump back into it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Please like and subscribe. Ring the bell on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, make sure you like and share. You can share it from anywhere, Facebook or YouTube. We'd love more people to get involved in the conversation. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Well, he must have been talking about Kevin McCabe because I don't have any intellect at all. That's that's what it was. It's a pinch of. He's so mean. Can't believe I paid him to say those things. It's astonishing. The Michael Duke Show. Kevin McCabe is our guest, legislator here for the South Central area, Big Lake, KGB, the whole schmear out here. I can't remember what the new number is, so we'll just move on beyond it. Kevin, final days of the session are now upon us. We are 8 days left before we wrap things up. I guess it's 1 week from today, isn't it? I guess it is 1 week from today. Midnight, a week from today.
Right.
So what do you see happening here in the next 7 days? I mean, you and I, again, have often talked about time compression as a weapon. And you just were talking about the energy bills that they're trying to omnibus up and everything else. What do you expect to see with the what do you expect to see here in the last 7 days of the session?
Well, so the operating budget is through the Senate. I expect that will be done shortly in conference committee, and it is actually. I mean, the conference committee is meeting daily. When you see Representative Edgman and Johnson and Ortiz missing from the floor session, it's because they're working with their Senate counterparts on the conference committee. So they're working hard on that. The capital budget should be through the floor in the next day, hopefully today, but possibly it'll be tomorrow, depending on the number of amendments that arrive. And then that will be through and available for conference committee. And, then we'll have a couple days. And this is kind of unusual. Usually we pass the budget out and sine die and we're gone. Hopefully there will be a couple of days left and people are not so excited to get out of town that we will clear some of the logjam of bills that are waiting in both rules committees, both the House and the Senate. And, there is a little bit of a battle going on. Hey, we'll start passing House bills when you start passing Senate bills to the floor for a vote. And, it's the trust thing once again. And it's the trust thing born of the turducken from last year. Everybody's kind of looking around and saying, well, do I really trust him to do that? And so somehow we have to get back to that trusting each other enough to at least put our bills on the floor and get them heard and see if they can pass each respective floor. And I think there are some good bills. There's some bills that are very workable. There's some food and farm bills. There's some, funding bills, ADA funding, railroad funding, that those need to pass. And, there's some stuff that's important that needs to get out. So hopefully that'll get done before we get out of Dodge.
And David asked the question that I wanted to ask, which is, and you've mentioned it earlier, that there could potentially be one about energy, but any special sessions for the schools or energy this is an election season. I can't imagine it would be easy to pull a special session together on any of these things, although the governor could call one if he doesn't see a bill that he wanted or see something out there. So what are your thoughts on the potential, especially in this election year, for special sessions, et cetera?
Well, I think the judge kind of threw a monkey wrench in the works for any special session on education. I think that leadership is just waiting around to see how the court case all resolves itself, and now the Supreme Court appeal and how that resolves itself. All of this rhetoric about how it's unconstitutional and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know. It sort of depends on how you define the Constitution. I guess it's just like I said. The Constitution does not require the legislature to adequately fund schools like everybody says it does. It just says we shall establish and maintain a system of schools available to all children, right? So, what does that mean? Can we put in code that the boroughs school districts should fund their own schools? Probably. We're not going to do that, but so the education thing, I think everybody's just kind of marking time, waiting for the legal battles to finish up. What's really important, though, is the Cook Inlet energy and Cook Inlet natural gas. I hesitate to call it a crisis, but it's rapidly getting there. And I think the governor wants it solved, and I think most of us in the legislature want it solved. So if he should call a special session, knowing that it's election season, whenever he calls it, my guess is it will be compressed and everybody will come down here for however long we need to and work pretty hard to get it done. So instead of stretching things out over a month and then doing the work in the last 3 days of a special session, maybe we'll try to come down and try to get it done. But that's just my opinion. Just from watching things, I don't know how we get out of here with the energy bills that are sort of waiting right now.
Right.
I don't know how we get out of here with those in the hopper and not call a special session.
What is your final plan here for the last 7 days? What are you focusing on and looking at? I mean, you mentioned your railroad, new railroad bill, some other things. So give us an idea of what you're going to be focusing on here in the final days of session, specifically for your district, for my district, District 30. Thank you, Tony. What are you looking at here? What are you focusing on?
Sure. So there's a couple of resolutions that need to be done. One of which I think everybody saw Senator Sullivan in committee, kind of ranting at his committee chair about the aviation fuel bill.
That's the only time I've ever seen Dan Sullivan get fired up. I mean, the guy is pretty milquetoast, but he was fired up in that guy. I can't even play that. I cannot play that comment on the radio. That's how fired up he was.
Yeah. Well, we have a resolution that we're going to send to him. Hopefully it'll be I have a transportation committee meeting at 9 this morning, and hopefully we will pass that out and get it to the floor pretty rapidly. I think Senator Kaufman has a companion in the Senate. We'll get those done and send them off to Senator Sullivan. Those apparently are more important than I ever thought before I came down here, for Senator Sullivan to take those to his committee chair, to the president even, and say, look, this is what Alaskans think. This is the state legislature that represents all the voters in Alaska, and this is what they think. So I think that's important. We really need to solve that. That has a potential of just killing the aviation industry in Alaska. Some of those to convert to a hydrogen engine which isn't really even in the mainstream yet. It's still under development. Could be $100,000 for a Beaver, maybe more. So those kinds of things are need to pass as well. So we're working pretty hard to get that done. We have a railroad bill that's up in the House today. That's a bonding bill to allow the railroad to bond for the Seward passenger dock. And I'm going to introduce an amendment to put the $58 million for phase one of Point McKenzie rail extension back in there, and that's a bond. So the railroad will be authorized to bond for that as well. I'm a little frustrated with that. The railroad wants to bond for a passenger dock. Passenger rail is about 30% of their business revenue, and freight revenue is about 70% of their business. So my argument for this is going to be, hey, if we are bonding at $120 million to fund a Seward passenger dock, we ought to be at least funding phase one of the Point McKenzie rail extension. The railroad hasn't built a single mile of track since we bought them, and it shows in our resource development. So focused on that quite a bit, and as I mentioned earlier, a couple of smaller bills that are moving pretty well through the House and the Senate. So
those are your focuses going on forward. All right. Well, we're down to about 3 minutes here, so I'll give you a chance, to summate this session. What do you think? I mean, what happens? What happens? Next session after the election? Do we get a reorganization? Do the people speak? What are you hearing from your constituencies? Give me your final thoughts here.
Yeah, so that'll be very interesting. We do need, we need to. Some folks are going to need help. We would love to take the seat in Ketchikan. Representative Ortiz is an independent, and Laddie Shaw likes to say that's really just a Democrat in witness protection program. But so we'd like Jeremy Bynum is running down there, very conservative, very well spoken, very up on energy and that sort of thing, hydro especially. So he's a good choice down there. We're talking, of course, with Hajdukovic in Fairbanks, and there's others in the valley that are running against conservatives, but they're also conservative. Rob Yunt, Jubilee Underwood. So if we can shift the makeup a little bit, and if we can get 22, 23 in the House where we're not dependent on the vote from folks that are not politically aligned with us, if
Right.
I could say it like that.
Right. Well, they're not dependable votes, right? I mean, they're not
Right.
it's not a solid voting block. They're not dependable votes in that regard. It does make it difficult to get some of the things done because you never know if people are going to scamper off the reservation.
Right. Yeah. And that's, we talk about that together all the time when we get together, talk about, well, and I mentioned this on the radio here before. So if we had a binding caucus, it would be easier to keep those votes in line, but we don't necessarily want a binding caucus. So we're kind of on this fine line of this is what it looks like. And you really have to demonstrate some statesmanship and leadership to try to convince people to vote the way that they need to vote to support the caucus.
No, hey, Kevin, it would be really easy if this was a dictatorship, but we don't want a dictatorship, right? I mean, it's the same kind of thing. The binding caucus, yes, in theory, everything would be easier, but we don't want people to be subjugated for their vote from the very first minute they get started. So you're right. It would be easier, but it also would be wrong. And so this is what the framers of not just the state but the nation intended, was this kind of conceptual free-for-all where all the ideas get thrown together, and it doesn't make it easy, but that was part of the point in the whole.
Right. And it does. It makes it very messy. If you really look at it, it kind of look at a basketball team. You join a basketball team, you know that if you don't do what the coach tells you and what the team wants you to do, you're going to be benched. Or you join the military and you know that your sergeant is going to tell you what to do and you're okay with that. Well, oftentimes, without it saying it's a binding caucus, if the caucus comes to an agreement and says, we as a group believe in this, and this is what we're going to do, and anybody that doesn't do that,
it's going to be tough. Kevin McCabe, our guest, out of time, folks. Sorry, Kevin, we were running up against the break there at the top of the hour. I give you final thoughts here, my friend. Final thoughts for anybody out there. What do we need to do? Election time, like you said, I think we need to be taking a hard look at the folks that we're sending back to Juneau this go round. It's going to be a full. We got a real big bite at the apple here. We could make some changes. So final thoughts here before I let you go.
Sure. So looking at a couple of the comments, I see a comment from Randy talking about rail for LNG. One of the things that I say consistently is if we had not been so chicken and risk averse, and if we had built the rail the way we need to Port McKenzie, we would have some energy solutions in LNG. Even building it all the way to the North Slope, instead of building a gas line, let's build the rail up there. Would solve many problems. Be able to haul pipe up there, be able to haul natural gas back. It would solve a number of problems. So, that's sort of a sunk idea, but going forward, we need to look at the long-term consequences of what we're doing.
It's always been one of those things where I've said, we're supposed to have infrastructure in Alaska, and that should have been one of the first things that was built out at the statehood, right? Was the whole thing of the idea of, we needed rail all over the state, and we should connect it. If we connected the rail, now this is a multi-gazillion dollar project, don't get me wrong, But if you connected the rail to the lower 48 and plugged it into Canada and everything else, I mean, Alaska would look a lot different if we had invested that money differently at the beginning.
Oh, I agree. You know, the key to resource development is transportation. You can't have resource development, even if it's a mule and saddlebags. You can't have resource development without a way to get your resource to the market or to the people that want to buy it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. All right, well, Kevin McCabe, thank you, my friend. I know it was early for you. I'm sorry. You look like you're a little tired. You're ready for the last day of session and a little bit of a vacation. I imagine you'll probably sleep for a couple of days just to kind of get caught up when this is all said and done.
Oh, I'm hopeful, but I think Lynn has a number of projects for me to do. So thanks for letting me be the lead band for the Dozer. So tell him I said hi.
Yeah. Hey, no problem. You tell Lynn. I'll write you a note for Lynn if you need a note to say he said I could take a day off and sleep because God, I need it. That's horrible stuff. Just tell her I said it was okay. All right. Kevin McCabe, thank you so much, my friend. As always, good to talk with you. Thanks for being part of it.
Thanks, Michael. Good to see you.
You too, my friend. Kevin McCabe, our guest here on the program this morning. Yeah, I mean it. Man, so many crazy things happening down there. We'll see. Hopefully his bride lets him sleep a little bit when this is all said and done. I know that feeling. I see the look on his face, and I just know that feeling of exhaustion, absolute exhaustion. I'm ready to go. All right. Well, let's get things set up here. We've got state senator. Ooh, I demoted him. State Senator Mike Shower is going to be joining us here in just a hot second. So let me make sure that everything is set up. Make sure everything's set up properly. It looks like we're good to go. Let's see if we can. Ring him on the phone here. Oh, that's not working. What the heck? Let's try this again. Nope, that's still not working. Okay, hold on a second here. There we go. See if that works. There we go. I don't know what was going on there, but let's see if we can get him squared away. And we'll give him a call right now. We'll see if we can get it going on so that we're all ready to go and get him rolling for this morning's broadcast.
Yeah, yo, what's up?
Yo, what's happening, my friend? How you doing? How's life treating you in the big city there?
The big city, huh? Well, methinks it doesn't mean what you think it means.
Yeah. No, I got you on that one, my friend. You counting down the minutes here at this point? Are you ready to go?
7 days, 23 hours, 19 minutes, and 16 seconds. Yes, I'm counting them down.
Counting them down. This has definitely been an interesting run this year. Especially being down in the minority, the miniature minority, the unofficial minority. So yeah, it should be an interesting good here. All right, let's 20 bucks. Harold, you still owe money to whatever my house in Wasilla, $20. He just said $20 you wouldn't show. So $20 to my house in Wasilla, Harold. I expect the receipt in my email.
I bet he hasn't paid $1 to any of them yet.
I don't know if he has or not. I don't know. I like to think the best of people, Mike. I like to think the best of him and think that maybe he has paid in the previous ones, because I think we're up over $100 at this point. But yeah,
well, maybe he'll actually show you proof at some point as opposed to just saying it.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Again, $20 to my house in Wasilla for the homeless kids there. Harold, if you feel so inclined, you put your money where your mouth is. All right, Mike, well, hold the line. I'll be right back to you. We're going to get ready to go, folks. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff, and we'll continue here. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. State Senator Mike Shower up next for the Shower Hour of Power. Let's do it. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Welcome to Hump Day. That's right, Wednesday. We can see Firearms Friday from here. Woo, man, it's looking good. Looking good. Looking forward to that. The weekend is coming up. But we've still got lots of great stuff to discuss and cover with you. We just finished up with Representative Kevin McCabe from District 30 up here in the Mat-Su, and we're going to continue here in just a hot second with State Senator Mike Shower to kick off the Shower Hour of Power. But I would be remiss if I did not announce and tell people up in the interior what happened with the special election yesterday for the tax cap busting $10 million to save our schools. And my friends, have I got the good news for you. The official word out on Proposition A. On the yes side, 5,049 votes yes to save our schools and charge property owners more. On the no side, 10,841 votes. A no. It was a resounding, let me crush you into the dirt on this side over here. So congratulations to Fairbanks for getting out and doing that. Now, I will say that I was expecting this, and I was hopeful, because that was my feeling, and everybody that I talked to was that people said, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And I hope that this is a repudiation of the school board's attempt and the boroughs and the education industry's attempt to fleece the people in the Fairbanks North Star borough of more of their hard-earned dollars. So again, Proposition A in Fairbanks fails 2-1. More than 2-1. 2-1. I like it. I like it a lot. So I meant to mention that last hour. I didn't. So there you go. Down, burning in flames, crashing into the ground. Let's hope they learn their lesson and never do that again. Although of that, I am not hopeful. I'm not hopeful. Yes, epically even. It epically crashed and burned. And I'm absolutely excited. Especially since I'm a Fairbanks property taxpayer, because I own property still up there and I couldn't vote on it. I mean, I asked somebody to vote for me on it, but I don't know if they did or not. So we'll see. Anyway, let's pull the plug on that and get on over to our discussions with State Senator Mike Shower, again, the Shower Hour of Power, to discuss the session, wood ticks, lunatics, politics, the whole thing. State Senator Shower joins us right now. Let's see what he has to say. Hello, my friend. Hello. How are you?
I am I am ready for this session to be over. How about that?
It's that good, huh? It's that good.
Oh,
I am so
Mike, I
ready.
don't even have any committees and nothing to do most of the time on most days other than wander around and visit offices and watch committee hearings on the TV or on the computer, etc. And I am ready for it to be over.
This is like a bad version of Netflix and chill. You're just watching gavel to gavel and molder. I mean, that's you're sitting in the just waiting for the tree and the grass roots to grow on you because you can't get anything else done. I've watched a few clips of your floor session. I can't even bring myself to watch the floor sessions anymore because they're just so. I mean, I can watch the recaps, but man, and to see them, just the eye rolls whenever you get up or Rob gets up or somebody, it's just like this total disdain for you guys. And I'm blown away by the fact that they just decided to disenfranchise tens of thousands of Alaskans by kicking you guys to the curb and offering you no respect as elected officials. I mean, again, respect is gained, but at the same time, there should be a little bit of respect for the office and the fact that you represent so many different people. And the fact that anytime you guys get up to speak, it's like oh, okay, here we go again. And they just know that they're going to riddle you full of bullet holes. And it's just, man, it's so aggravating to watch, especially since I'm the one that's being disenfranchised as one of your constituents.
You are, yes, about 120,000. It's about 40,000 ish per Senate district. So, roughly 120,000 are, disenfranchised. And frankly, there's usually a minority. That's no big deal, right? That's the political differences. That it is what it is. But again, I go back to Mike. I mean, we discussed this, and nobody can remember a time when the minority wasn't given minority status. At least that show of respect of, okay, well, for now you're on the down and out, right? I mean, that happens in politics. Sometimes you're in the club, sometimes you're out, depending on numbers and how things work out. But again, nobody can remember a time where they didn't give the minority committees to work on to have a voice. They didn't give them minority status, so they had a minority leader on the floor to at least have some representation there to, make sure the majority doesn't completely ignore them. They didn't, not give them a press person so they could put out, the counter voice to what was happening. That's really the story here that nobody talks about. It's not so much that we were shoved into a minority and put to the side, because that happens. It's how we were treated as a minority, Mike. That's the thing. And then you look at the beyond that manipulation of the system. What becomes even more important when you think about this time of year when they start appointing conference committees, right?
Right.
Look at and I posted about this the other day. Look at the imbalance in the makeup of the conference committee for the budgets. You have one out of the six members, one who represents the majority of Alaskans who all live on the road system from Homer to Fairbanks, right? That is like 3 out of 4 Alaskans, roughly, something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers. And there is one of the six members of that conference committee appointed by the House Speaker and the Senate President represents that. The other 5 members, Mike, are from rural Alaska. Now, you tell me how that makes sense, how that is going to be an equitable distribution of the resources and the priorities for most Alaskans when 5 of the 6 are from rural Alaska. And you think about the makeup and how the minority was treated. You think some of them weren't smart enough to realize that when this happened? They go, well, hey, if we don't give them any minority status whatsoever, then that means they don't get a seat at the table, which means when we make up the conference committee, we're going to have 3 members from the majority out of the Senate. And the House Speaker only gets 2 members from her majority and has to appoint a recognized minority. So you're going to have a conference committee that's 4-2, 4-2 on all the issues. The House majority controlled by Republicans will lose because the Senate majority is controlled by Democrats. So then, furthermore, when you look at the makeup of it, like 4 of the 6 members, not just that's bad. That's really not a fair and balanced, representation. 5 of 6 from outside the road system, but 4 of the 6 are Democrats. And I know
Right.
some people out there, the apologists, will say, well, two of them are independent. No, they're not.
Yeah.
Edgman was a Democrat, always has been. And so is Ortiz. This is like Strage saying, oh, I'm independent. No, you're not. You
Yeah.
caucus with the Democrats. You hang out with the Democrats. You vote with the Democrats. You're supported and funded by Democrats. You put an I or a U in front of your name because that allows you to say, oh, look, I'm unbiased. No, you're not.
If it walks
That's
like a
one thing.
duck and it quacks like a
You know,
duck, my
be a
God,
duck.
it's probably a duck, right?
Well, just be a duck. I mean, be proud of if you're a Democrat, fine, be proud of it, but don't be disingenuous about who you are, because all it does is and I've done it before. It takes a quick look at APOC. Look who you are, and I get it. Edgman switched it because that way it was like, oh well, we can have an independent person to run the majority in the House a few years ago. So, but it's still, you look at it, go, it's unfortunate that many people don't know what's going on, right, Mike? Is the old saying, low information voters, because they're just going, oh, look, he's got to be objective. And they don't even know that the guy was a Democrat almost his entire career. That's the stuff that drives you nuts. But go back to the point. It's like, this is the kind of stuff that happens with the manipulation, right? It's like, wow, no minority status, no press person, no seat at the table, no conference committee appointments, no nothing. So I'm hopeful that we get to November and we have some relief and we get some new people in, and at least we have some Republicans that are going to stick together and not allow Democrats to control the Senate, or if they do, a much stronger minority that has a seat at the table and they can't shut us up. So, it happens, Mike. This is not the first time. And there's a few members of the majority that have been stuck in minorities before. Not that they were treated like this, but they've been in minorities. They should have known better. The saying goes, Mike. I mean, you be careful how you treat people when they're down, because someday you may be there again. And so
Yeah.
see how it goes.
Yeah, no, we've all seen that. We've all seen that. When the shoe is on the other foot, we'll see how it plays out. Now, the question is, if the shoe was on the other foot, I still don't know if Mike Shower and Shelley Hughes and Rob Myers would say turnabout's fair play, or would you guys be like, okay, you're a minority officially. Here's what I mean, I just don't know if I could play by exactly the same rules that these guys seem to be playing with.
Well, Mike, we're not that kind of people. That's not who we are. I respect the institution and the process. So if they were, afforded the right for a minority, then that's the rights they're going to get, right, to do things, because that's just the right way to do business. But at the same time, you can't be afraid to fight fire with fire, right?
Right.
I mean, the way we've been treated with our bills not being heard, not being moved. If you think, if all of a sudden I wasn't in the minority. If you think that somebody comes and goes, oh, well, I'd like to get my bill, but you mean like you held my bill for 2 years, never gave me a hearing, and removed it?
What do
you think I'm going to? I mean, Mike, you can forgive, Brady Chris, but you think I'm going to forget how we were treated?
Yeah.
No,
well, no,
I'm not.
I don't think that. I don't think that you'll forget, but I just don't see you doing some of the same, low blows and childish schoolyard behavior that we see here at the same time. That doesn't mean that you have to pass their bills out. I'm just saying that at least they won't be disenfranchised, or their voters won't be disenfranchised. I mean, a guy can dream at this point, right? That's what I'm looking for. Maybe a guy can dream.
I mean, that's the thing, Mike. I mean, mostly what I have concerns about and what I'm focused on is looking at Republicans and go, you seriously? Which of you Republicans seriously want to give control to some of these Democrats when you look at the left-wing stuff coming out of the Senate?
Right.
Are you really that, whatever emotion you are, upset about whatever, that you can't join with 3 more conservative Republicans so that we can have Republican control and not have craziness, in control of the committees, not have craziness coming out with bills and legislation that a majority of Alaskans clearly don't support, or would not have sent a majority of Republicans to the legislature, right? So I just look at this sometimes and go, just get over whatever your issues are and join. It's the Reagan thing, like 80-20%. It's like, well, look, if you agree on 80% of the things, but not 20%, that's good enough.
Right.
It's better than giving power
to
the Democrats and watching them push just stuff that would fit better in California and New York and whatever than Alaska.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
really? Red flag laws and this, that, and the other. That is crazy. So I put one out, not only about the membership on the conference committees, but last night I put one out and I said, just so people have the numbers by the breakdown. I doubt you've seen it, but I said, just so people know what the grand totals are for this year. The operating budget about $12.4 billion. Capital budget is about $3 billion. So we're at about $15.5 billion ish. These are all ish numbers. And so when you look at it by the numbers, like here's what the state of Alaska public sector spends per day: over $42 million every day, over $1.7 million every hour, over $29,000 every minute, almost $500 every second. Or put another way, that's over $21,000 for every man, woman, and child in Alaska for this fiscal year coming up. And I make the point that the PFD should have been about 3,500, and today it's around 1,380, plus or minus a little bit. So what I want people to understand, and the point of making this post, Mike, was people, they still get them out there. Oh, it's a balanced budget, and government hasn't really grown. You listen to some of the Democrats step up and say that, oh, but it really hasn't grown. It's been flat.
Right.
I'm like, if it hasn't grown, then explain to me that extra over $2,000 that we're treating the PFD as our little piggy bank to go back to like the ATM and keep taking out more money every year to spend what we want and then just take what money we need to pay for it. If we haven't grown government, then where is that over $2,000 for every eligible Alaska going? Like,
right.
It's going to government because we don't have enough tax money to pay for the size of government we've grown. So you can't tell people we haven't grown government. The proof is right there in the numbers.
Yeah, just look at it. No, it's going to be amazing. All right, State Senator Mike Showers, our guest, the Michael Duke Show. We got to go. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend. Michael Duke Show.
All right, Mike Showers, our guest. Mike, I'm going to ask you to take over for a second. I got to see a man about a horse, unfortunately. I'll be right back. You can continue on your thoughts about that.
Sure. I guess
you can keep talking on that topic, is what I meant.
Okay, that's a new one. All the time on the radio over the years, I've never had to just keep talking to everybody. So, how do you do this if you're a radio host and there's no guest? So it's the flip side. Well, I guess I'll just keep talking about the numbers. So, if we have, when you're looking at those numbers, a total budget of call it $15.5 billion, and you look at your PFD for this year, like I said, around 1,380. The House had a much bigger one, 22 something roughly, not quite a 50-50 PFD, although I put in amendments for statutory 50-50 and then whatever was left. And all of those, of course, are going nowhere in the Senate, like I do every year. And so we are not even, realistically, we're not even at a 75-25, which is what some senators had proposed and some Democrats. So we're going to be even below that. And the reality is the number that we have for money below the 75-25, once you look at the shortfall for the capital budget coming out of the House and the bills like, defined benefit and others they're still trying to push in the Senate more than the House, what you're going to end up with is likely even a smaller PFD, potentially out of the conference committee, or, and this is worse in some ways, they're going to reduce the capital budget to make up to keep that 75-25, because that's going to look even worse for them because they've been selling their head of, no, we can afford a 75-25, but we're going to spend more than even that at this point for what it looks like. They said, oh, we're going to cut capital, which means there goes maintenance on roads, bridges, and other things that we need. So either way we look at it right now, they have increased spending to an amount where, we can't even look at, capital projects, which are things we desperately need because government is taking up so much of the spending. So the reality, folks, is that day of reckoning is coming. I still predict it's 3, 4, 5 years down the road, depending on how much we spend and who's in charge of the legislature and all of those things. But we will see. As I've said before, the numbers as of this is 2 or 3 years ago, about $125 million a year of increased spending before we ever get to a point where We've added other spending, other bills. That's just
Right.
contract increases we already have. So that's
Right.
a $500 million plus every 5 years, anyways. So the piggy bank is getting smaller. Somebody's whacked it with a hammer. Ain't that much left.
Well, and to say that and thank you, by the way, I appreciate that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, the worst part is people say, well, we haven't increased the budget. Well, I remember when I first started doing this show 25 years ago, that the average expenditure in the state was less than $12,000. It was $12,000 per person. So you can't tell me that it hasn't increased. You haven't increased. It's inflation. It's inflation. I mean, it's insane. $24,000, $22,000 for every man, woman, and child in the state. Come on. I mean, are you getting, if you're a household of four, are you getting your $85,000 worth of government services out there every year? Does that make sense?
Well, that's the point, Mike. Like I've asked before, when people say this, I mean, the only thing people really probably get any valid use from, I mean, if you realistically look at most Alaskans that just work and live and do their thing, the capital budget would probably be the place, right? Because that's roads. We all drive or you use the ferry or bridges or airports, I got it, that kind of stuff. So be it, right? Those are things that we can't do generally individually. But, when you look at the bigger budget, when's the last time you called a police officer or a firefighter or EMS? I mean, when do you really have contact with the government besides when it wants something like the tax collector, right? Or the tax assessor?
Right.
So what do most Alaskans really get for that service that they're not actually paying taxes on? Well, education. Well, a lot of people don't have kids. What about them?
Yeah.
A lot of people, everybody pays property taxes. So what about that? I mean, it's a pretty easy argument to shoot down, and I know we've got to go back.
We got to jump back into it. So let's continue on. All right, here we go. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the stuff. Let's do it.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Yes, I am a pain somewhere. Somebody out there is using my name in vain. I can hear it right now. Probably somebody in Juneau. Mike Shower is our guest, state senator, District O. My senator. In fact, I got a chance to talk to both my legislators today, Kevin McCabe in hour one, Mike Shower in hour two. We were just talking about being disenfranchised as a voter and how I'm a little hacked off about it. We also were talking about the size and scope of government, and Mike was hitting us with all the numbers on how much the government spends per person. And I just made the comment that Mike said, they keep saying, well, we haven't raised government. We haven't raised government. What was the number again per person, Mike, right now? 22,000.
It's about $21,095 if you do the math. So it's over $21,000 a person.
$21,000. When I started this program, I recall because I used to do that all the time, break it down on a per person basis. How much does it cost government? And it was just under $12,000. So you're telling me that in the intervening 20 years, we went from $11,000, $12,000 to $21,000. That's not all inflation, baby. And I just, again, I got to ask the question for all you, mom and dads and 2.1 kids out there, all you families of four, are you getting $85,000 worth of government services every year? Does this make sense to you? You're telling me you can't cut any of it? But that's just, it's a fairy tale, right, Mike? There's just no will. Even amongst, this is the real fiscal conservative position. Even the Republican moderates are like, oh, well, we can't really cut too much from, we're at the bone. We've cut the bone,
Let me give you an example of that, Mike. So we had 21 amendments on the floor last Wednesday in the Senate. The minority, the three of us, had 21 amendments. One of those amendments that I put forward, they were all, reductions to spending, transparency, accountability type of stuff, including the standard, I spend the statutory and the 50-50 PFD. I even had a Hail Mary that got shot down, which was my last chance. It was going to be like an $1,800 or $1,900 PFD. It was the 900 and something million they had already dedicated to the PFD, which is like the 1380. Woohoo! Not even really a 75-25, like 25% to the PFD. But it was scooping up every other dollar that was left that we could find, right? And that shot down. So standard. But let me give you an example of the lack of willpower. So we have this continuing battle over funded but unfilled PCNs, personal positions, right, of the state government.
Go ahead.
Every year, right? And so we found that, this last year, the previous year, not the money we're dedicating coming up to the new fiscal year, but from this year, this current fiscal year, we put $90 million. Well, you know what we found out of that, Mike? We got this from members of the House, and we validated through legislative finance, the non-biased objective group that we're supposed to use and trust when we like what they say, right? $80 million plus of that was unused. So we looked at that. We go, they're just terrified and horrified when we take any money from the government, even though they always are, complaining about the administration and what they do. We said, let's just take 45 million of it. So we'll take about half.
Not the whole
of that
thing. Not the whole thing.
Not the whole thing.
Right.
Just in case they might have an emergency and find, 5,000 government employees the next month and a half. Just in case, that pipe dream. We will just take about half of it. And we will use that to offset. And we had about 3 different ways we tried it to make people feel comfortable enough to do this, right? So granted, Mike, we're not adding more money. And we're not chopping anything from this coming fiscal year. We're merely taking some of the money that wasn't used by the administration to offset what we would spend this year to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. Mike, you would have thought I dropped a nuclear weapon, right, over Juneau and go, oh, the destruction that has been wrought by this.
Right.
So one option was to take 45 million. Let's just offset a portion of the $175 million. We're increasing BSA for this year like we do every year, right?
Right.
So we're just spending a little less. So just good stewards of taxpayer dollars will save 45 million. Or let's take it and let's put it back into the ERA or the CBR that was, that was short. Or let's put it, we should try to put it in the PFD. Have a little extra, right? $70 a person. Not much, but hey, with the cost of living today, it'd be helpful. Every one of those ideas was shot down, Mike, and people stood up and some of them said, we've looked for this and we don't see this anywhere. And there's no way that there's extra money because if we'd have seen that, we would have absolutely done something. And I'm getting there going, huh. So I turn around, look at my chief of staff behind me. So I'm like, call Ledge Finance, your contacts, or let's see what they say because, maybe we're wrong. Because the Senate finance table, they looked at this, right? They looked at the budget. It's possible they missed something. So let's just see, because they're saying there's no way there's any money left over. We get a call to Ledge Finance. So they said, well, that's not true. We're looking right at it. The $80 million of lapsed funding is right here, right in front of us.
Right.
So I'm going, ain't that something, Mike?
Yeah.
We could have easily saved 80 million or some portion of that of taxpayer dollars we didn't have to spend. But boy, they shot that down faster than I don't know. I was trying to think of some Southern saying some grandpa had, right? Faster than a jackrabbit on a hot day or something, whatever. And boy, they shot that down, Mike. So even something as simple and straightforward as taking some of the money they clearly didn't need and offsetting the spending this year got shot down by the Senate majority.
Well,
craziness.
And Rob Meyer's proposals to eliminate some of the PCNs. The ones from last year, so positions that haven't been filled for 15 months, 500 positions, by the way, that haven't been filled for 15 months, that failed. And he was told by the Senate co-chair, the finance co-chair, oh, that doesn't exist. Wait a minute. What do you mean it doesn't exist? You are funding positions that are not filled. What do you mean by it doesn't exist? Like you said, Ledge Finance says, I'm looking right at it. And then Rob tried to remove the PCNs that had been on the books since January of 2020. Empty positions, empty for 4 years. These positions have been empty for 4 years. It only would have saved $4.5 million, but that's $4 million here, $4 million there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. That one shot down. And then he's told by, I think it was Andy Josephson, said, well, they're using that money they're spending that money on good things. Wait a second. Isn't it the legislature's job to appropriate money? Are you abdicating your responsibilities to bureaucrats to decide what's good for Alaska's money? Is that what you're doing? I mean, Mike, this is madness when they say it just doesn't exist. What are you talking about? You're expending $52 million on 500 positions that are there but aren't filled. What do you mean it doesn't exist? The employees don't exist? We agree on that. The money exists. What are you talking about?
Which is my point. And I made a point during his amendment, Mike, which is, salient to the argument, is that if the administration all of a sudden has a hiring wave or whatever happens, right, and they run out of money, because we are the appropriating authority, we're supposed to be accounting for every penny. If they were to run out of money, Mike, is there a process that they would come back to the legislature and say, we need a little more because this is what happened? Is there a process for that?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that what the supplemental budgets are for at the end of the year? Isn't there like a supplemental process?
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. See, that's the way it's supposed to work, Mike, is that when we find out that we're giving the administration more money than it needs, we're supposed to pull that money back. And that would be accountability and transparency in government, because when they needed the money, they would come tell us and we go, okay, we'll approve a supplemental for that. Show us why you need it. Got it. Because this is what I go back to, Mike. This is like being the parent, right? And your child goes, I spent my $100 already. Well, that's supposed to last for the month. This is only the second week of the month. How'd you run out? Well, whatever happened, my car broke and this, that, and the other. You go, okay, well, in that case, you did good. So here's another, $50 to get you through the end of the month. That's how it's supposed to work. That's transparency and accountability. But I've said this before in the program a few months ago. I said, your kid comes to you. I've used this on the Senate floor. I said, your kid comes to you and says, well, here's your $100, and they come to you 2 weeks later and they say, I need more money. And you go, well, why? I'm not going to tell you. Well, then you're not going to get any more money. But that's not how we do it, Mike. It's this oddest thing that we know there's extra money we're funding, and it's like there's backroom agreements or something in handshakes, because you go, there's a process for this to make it accountable to the people, to the public, and transparent to what's happening and where the money's going. And yet, when we know for a fact there's $80 million in this one case, and we can't even use any of that to offset and be better stewards of the government money, it truly is insanity. I don't even know how to deal with that, because we pointed out clear facts, crystal clear facts that are unarguable. And you have Senate Majority members saying, nope, not true. We're like, yeah, it is. It's right here in black and white. Wait, how do you deal with that, Mike? I mean, I don't know where to go from here we can't line up the facts any stronger than they are. And people are just shaking their head. And it's like, you're looking at them and you're hold up 2 + 2 is 4. Nope, it's 5.
Yeah.
No, it's 4. No, nope, it's 5.
It's
I'm
5.
telling you, it's
It's
5.
5. I'm telling you right now.
I
Yeah.
don't know how you argue with that, Mike. I just
Yeah.
don't. So,
Donna says, and by the way, because Naresh is in the chat room, he says fiscal year 24 PCN laps estimated at 80 million, 25 is estimated at 90 million. And then Donna Ardwin says, and that's just the general fund. Total unfilled vacancies and laps is $200 million. $200 million
yes,
in unfilled and lapsed positions and money. That's I mean, that you want a chunk of your PFD? Well, there you go. There's another $2,000 or $1,000 or whatever it is for. I mean, and yet it doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. It doesn't match their narrative.
Do you see how protective members of the legislature are of government in general? Just 100% protect of every dollar they can get into the government. It's going to stay there, and they will not let it be reduced. They just won't, Mike. And we've tried that battle before, which is why I tried to be reasonable. And I thought, oh, well, maybe if we're reasonable about this, maybe a couple of these amendments would slide through, because we had some good ones, Mike. Like Donna was saying there in the chat room, but yeah, we know it's about 200 million. We've talked it before, and they'll make a counter argument that you can say, okay, I can see that, seasonal hires in the summertime, we need some of that because they're not all permanent. Okay, I'll give you a little bit, which is why I only tried for about half of last year's lapse funds that they didn't use. I'm like, that's a very reasonable position, Mike. That reasonable position wasn't even considered by the Senate majority. Not even considered.
Right.
Not one of those. We had some other good ones in there, Mike, like $500,000, just $500,000. So if you do the math there, $500,000 is what? That's about 20 minutes of spending for the state in a day.
Right.
To have more extra prosecutors for the backlog and the significant number of sexual assaults in the state. Denied, shot down by the entire Senate majority. I'm like, I thought sexual assault is a priority for the legislature, but yeah, you shot down money for extra prosecutors? What about more Department of Law interns for helping with prosecutors and public defenders that shot down? Another $500,000. We tried that. They said no. I mean, Mike, all these very common sense and reasonable amendments we had to make the budget a little better was no, no, and no. Whether it was to increase things like public safety or decrease lapsed money and spending and a little more accountability and transparency, everything was shot down 100%. I mean, and these really were good. I mean, we really put a lot of thought into these going, this is a good one. That, yeah, this I think will get enough support. Or this one over here, yeah, I mean, how are they going to argue against, trying to save a little bit of money? But Mike, it was just, I was like, by the end of the day, I was just laughing. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I mean, you literally, and I made the point, and I think it pissed one of them off. And I put in, I forget which particular amendment was. I said, in the capital budget debate 2 weeks ago, and they tried to use me at a point of order, right? They're trying to shut me down. And I said, a couple of weeks ago in the capital budget, I asked for just $100,000, $100,000, right? That's like 3 minutes of spending bare 4 minutes of spending of the state in a day, $100,000 for a clean water well for a community in one of my districts. That's it. And by the way, I asked for it the second time with lapsed funding, right? So it was not even new money. It was money from last year, just a reappropriation. I got denied. The majority shot it down. All 17 of them voted no. And just a few minutes later, they gave it to the Senate Rules Chair, $1 million, Mike, of reappropriation money for the long trail, for a freaking long trail. And I couldn't get $100,000 for clean drinking water. You tell me how the priorities are balanced or how they're treating the minority and their people. Ridiculous.
Hey, wait, my head is about to explode. Let me grab some duct tape and we're going to take a break because otherwise the blood is shooting out of my eyeballs right now. I mean, clean drinking water? Absolutely not. A long trail that no one will use all the way to the North Slope, or maybe a dozen people from some green granola community down in the lower 48. $1 million? No big deal. No big deal, man. No big deal.
Yeah.
All right, we'll continue here. The Michael Duke Show. This is just BS. All right, back with more. The Michael Duke Show.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
I think Melissa sums up my feelings on this rather well. WTF? What? $1 million for a walking trail, but we couldn't spare $100,000 for a clean drinking well in a community. Somebody has got their priorities all effed up at this point. I mean, seriously. And so they called a point of order on you for bringing this up, Mike? Is that what you said?
That was part of it, because you can see, you can kind of see the whispers and who's talking to who and their faces and how they're looking. You watch body language because they rarely look at you when you're speaking, especially when they know what they're doing is wrong. And they know this is wrong, Mike. There's no doubt that this is nothing more than punitive, actions against 3 Senate members that didn't play ball the way they wanted to play.
We can't let anything go through for these guys. We're going to crush everything they do. We're going to punish them because they won't get with the program. So we're going to spank them for any. Doesn't matter how good it is. Doesn't matter how much sense it makes. Doesn't matter if it doesn't cost a dime. We're going to just smack them down because they refuse to get with the program.
I know. That's the reality of it. And that's why, it's very difficult to be in this position, because there are times where I just want to just lash out. You get so angry by the behavior that you're seeing, and especially when it's common sense and reasonable things that will set you off, right? You want to be civil, you want to be respectful, you want to look at the process and the way the system is set up and do your best to work inside of it. But you get very frustrated when you see things like that. 100,000 versus 1 million. Clean drinking water versus a long trail. And by the way, not even spending new money, just reappropriating money from the previous year that was not used. That is beyond the pale. That is beyond reasonable in that case. And you go, there are some things you go, like, I wasn't being unreasonable. In the capital budget, I put in amendments, 5 of them for just the 2.75 million that all of my majority members were told, oh, you get to play with 2.75. You all get that. Just tell me what you want. You'll get it. Well, we said, well, we'll do the same thing for us because we have things like clean drinking water and shot down. It was just punitive, Mike. That's the point. And that's when it gets frustrating to the beyond the pale, because it's so unreasonable that now you're talking about life safety things, right? I needed an EMS building for fire and police way up in one of my communities on the other side, on the west side. Needed clean drinking water in another one, and things like that. And you go, that's just unreasonable, because now, because of your emotions or your feelings or whatever you're upset about, you're punitively punishing Alaskans on things that are desperately needed, not just political. Oh, my bill didn't get approved. These are like life safety improvements, and therefore you do get angry. And boy, I was really hot on the first one, and the next amendment, I apologized. I said, look, I'm sorry, guys. I'm getting emotional. I admit it, but I'm very upset that I'm watching things like this happen, and it's very hard not to get emotional, and let your emotions leak through in your comments because you're getting so angry about watching how unreasonable they're acting.
Well, and it gets even worse. If you understand this whole situation, Mike, and I know that you understand it, but maybe the listeners don't, and Naresh makes the point. Naresh says the whole Long Trail is actually going to cost more. This $1 million is just for one little area. If you understand the Long Trail, they've already received, I think, almost $10 million for the Long Trail. And you don't understand, this money is going to organizations that are setting it up. And these organizations are taking and they're washing that money and they're using it. They're living off of it. They're people being paid salaries to put this Long Trail together. That money is being consumed not to actually go out and facilitate actual work on the trail. It's work on lobbying for more money, getting the public's interest, doing all this kind of stuff. People are living on this money. This is paying people's salaries to facilitate and to further the Long Trail, which is just going to cost us more money in the long. This is not just money to drill a well for people who need water. This is making people who are sucking off the government tit are out there making this money and putting it in their pocket and feeling like they're doing a good deed, and we just keep giving them more.
Well, I wonder how the right-of-way access on this Long Trail is going to work for development too, and I'll tell you why. And I don't know how much time we have left to talk about on the radio, but I was at a meeting. 1 minute, so we'll hold off and talk about this because I think the broader audience wants to hear this one, because it's Long Trail, it's historical trails, it's things that I want to bring up that talked about how it is obstructing development and economic activity in the state. Because I found this out at a meeting a couple of weeks ago I had with the DNR commissioner and some loggers and millers that we had in downtown Anchorage, and it was fascinating. At the same time, it was very frustrating. So I'll bring that up here in a minute on the broader radio one. So yeah, it's I don't know, Mike. I try my best, but boy, there are days where it gets the better of you. And
well, that's why you're better than me, because I tell them they're all full of stuff.
Did you just bleep yourself out?
I
did. You do that?
The most surprising thing Mike is saying is that there was unspent money. I didn't know our legislature ever met a dollar they didn't want to spend. Oh, I'm sure they spent all that unspent money. They just didn't spend it on life and safety things. They spent it on a trail instead of, 10 times what they could have spent on putting a clean well into a community. No, they spent it on a freaking trail. All right, we're going to continue here. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Here we go. Okay, so right before we came back from break, I said the worst part about this whole thing is that, because most people don't understand this whole Long Trail thing, this $1 million a drop in the bucket. I think they've already received, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat room if they remember I believe that they've already received almost $10 million on this. On this long,
it was over 13, but it could be wrong.
Yeah, from all the various sources, $10 million. And this is not $10 million for this Long Trail that's going out to actually, put shovels into the dirt and put guideposts up and do it. $10 million is going to organizations that are facilitating and advocating for the Long Trail. And they're using that money to pay their people, to pay their lobbyists to go down there and do it, to pay for all. This is money. This is where it works. This is how government gives money to these organizations. They use it to fund themselves and further their cause, to come back and lobby for more money. And basically, this is them on the government teat, just doing their thing, sucking up all the money. And this is $1 million, 10 times what you ask for a life, health, and safety issue. And they decided to spend it on a long trail, which is really just lining people's pockets at this point. But it even goes deeper than that, because there's issues with land use, Mike, and you were just going to tell us about this.
Yeah, so I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago with the DNR commissioner and a bunch of loggers and a miller, some of the millers out there, the guys that turn logs into products, right? And one of them's a constituent, very active guy. We were talking, he told me about this meeting, so I said, I'll show up because he's my constituent. So I went to this meeting, Michelle and I went, and we had this, I don't know, maybe 2 hours or so. It's fascinating because part of what we were talking about was access, old historical trail, and looking at this area they're trying to get to. And well, we're having some access problems because the feds control it. And this old historical trail, I'm like a long trail, had 500 feet on either side of the trail that was right-of-way access controlled by the feds that we couldn't cross without permission, wouldn't give it to us, etc. Back to the old, the feds have 2/3 of the land of the state, that wonderful deal that they've never honored the agreement. We're going, so we can't get there. We can't do that whole area that the state has it. Well, yeah, we're having a hard time. And, so I started asking some questions of people here, and they're going, do we really want economic activity, or do we have bureaucrats that are left-leaning ones that want to keep this a national park? I kind of got the wink. Yeah, there are some we're fighting that just will say no to everything. And you see these poor loggers here that are trying to just employ people and get loans for long term. They said, well, we can't get a loan to get new equipment because we weren't getting approval for just basic, enough feet board, they call it, or board feet, I guess it is, for how many trees they can cut down. We have hundreds of millions of trees in the state, Mike, and a few loggers, and we can't get here, we can't get there. The answer was always can't do it, can't get it. And the commissioner was sympathetic. He was trying to look at things we can do, but I'm just looking at him and I was getting so angry. I'm like, let me get this right. We can't cross this freaking massive trail with 1,000 feet of right of way that the feds control to get. No, yeah, that's a problem. Like, holy mackerel, how's the long trail going to impact economic development, whether it's logging or mining or building cheap and affordable housing for people they say they need? I don't know. I mean, it's just one thing after another of bureaucrats and regulation and government red tape stopping us from doing anything. And here's a couple of loggers and millers that are trying to employ people. Small guys, and they're like, the banks won't loan to me because I can't show that I've got 5 years of work ahead of me or whatever. And it's like, what is our problem, Mike? When we look at this stuff, we are our own worst enemy. We've met the enemy and he is us. And
well,
so
because it's all working according to plan, Mike. It's all working according to plan. Prop up the government is the economy. If we can give money to the long trail people and they can pay their people out of that money and foster a whole industry around creating this long trail and just ask for more money, then we're doing our job. We've created jobs. We're funding people. We're feeding people.
Mike, so what happens when the private sector fails?
Yeah,
where the tax money comes from to pay for that?
They don't care about that. They don't care about that because they're not dependent on the tax money from the private industry. They're getting all their money from the ERA and from the corporate taxes and things like that. And yeah, they may take a hit on some of the corporate taxes when small businesses fold and everything else, but that doesn't matter. As long as they're getting their money out of the permanent fund and doing all that, they're all good.
But Mike, I pointed out that we're just a couple of years away from the piggy bank running out of money. What are you going to do?
That doesn't happen. That's never going to happen, Mike. That's never. It doesn't. Okay. It doesn't exist. Didn't you hear? It doesn't exist.
I'm pretty sure that we're going to have that reckoning here sooner rather than
false news, misinformation. You're passing misinformation. With your
you mean like the misinformation against Bob Griffith?
Yes,
and the confirmation,
the spurious comments that you made up in your mom's basement. You just thought up all these things in your mom's basement, didn't you? And then came out here and spilled all this misinformation.
I can't imagine who wanted to vote against Mike McCarthy. Let's vote against the popular guy that's got his own radio program and resources, and let's vote no to shoot him down. Oh, that's going to go well for
Right.
him.
Well, let's blame the
We'll
lady.
see.
Let's tell the lady that has been a teacher for years that she's not qualified to be on the Board of Education because she's mostly taught at religious schools and not in a regular school.
That, Mike, oh my goodness, was that anti-Christian. You talk about discrimination. They said, oh, well, I didn't hear that this was, I didn't really hear the anti-Christian. Really? Really? You didn't hear that, sir? Senator? Because that's exactly what I heard about this. Well, she's a Christian and she's taught at Christian schools and she can't possibly understand. I'm sure she's a nice lady, right? They're very careful about their words,
Sure.
so they can't be called out of order. Oh, but it was all about the fact she was a Christian and she taught at Christian schools and she's just not going to understand what's going on in those Christian schools or in the secular schools. I'm like, how much more anti-Christian, but being careful to couch your language so you can't
Oh
be
yeah.
called on it.
Oh yeah. No.
I'm just like, oh my gosh, it was on full display yesterday. The left-wing Democrats yesterday, Mike, were on full attack mode, anti-conservative, anti-Christian. It's not even, they're not even in the closet about it anymore. Mike,
Right.
they're just open warfare on Christians and conservatives.
Well, Christians
And
apparently, we're not smart enough to be able to figure all this stuff out. That was the implication. She taught at a Christian school, so she's not smart enough to figure out how the secular schools work. That's essentially what they said.
If the Republicans and I know there are some in the Senate majority, are struggling with what's happening and coming out of the Senate, I got news for you. There's a plan. There's something we can do about that. After next year's election in November, how about we Republicans get together in a room and let's talk it through where our personal issues are. Let's figure out how to forgive and forget and move on and work together. And let's take the Senate back with a Republican majority. And you know what? You won't have to worry about all the craziness, because we will keep that from happening. That makes me think of things like Senate Bill 88. I believe Senator Giesel had a bill that's still not dead. That dream, right, for the big government people is still alive.
Defined benefits,
they had a hearing for it. Yeah, the defined benefits one was in House subcommittee or something, I think, last night. So it's a good, solid conservative subcommittee. But, the point is, it's like, I think Rep McCabe was telling me that they had it. It was really good. I'll have to go watch that when I didn't have a chance. But they're still trying to keep that alive. Well, you know what? If we have a good, solid Republican majority control the Senate, we won't have to worry about some of those things, Mike. If we look at election bills, I got the state Senate State Affairs guy said this is a bipartisan bill because he took Representative Vance's good, clean registration only bill that was like 2 pages, came across. She got 33 votes out of 40 for it, and now they've Christmas treated it again. I was listening to Senator Stedman talk about it, and he had a good point. Yesterday during the press conference, I was watching it. We went down and watched in person. He's like, look, this is tough. He's like, because they are shoving all these clean bills. They're shoving all kinds of bills. And people are like, well, how come the Senate's not moving? He's like, you're putting these huge bills together, these omnibus bills. We don't have time in the end game when we're trying to work in the budget, and I understood that. I go, that's a valid point, because they're taking clean bills and shoving them in. And the clean election bill that came across has now got all this stuff in it. But the reason I got upset and went and told the press members, I said, if this somehow makes it to the body, I'm going to ask the governor to veto it. And he should, because this is a left-leaning bill. They go, oh, it's got some, it's bipartisan. It's got some stuff. No, it's almost all left-leaning stuff, like same-day registration. Like, that's not right for fraud. Pre-registering 16-year-olds. All this stuff that the left desperately wants, Mike, and they're trying to say, well, it's bipartisan because we took Sarah Vance's bill and we shoved it full of our stuff. And it had these 2 little provisions from Senator Showers, previous election bill. So, we're a team effort. No, it's not. First of all, nobody asked me a word.
We call that camouflage. That's what we call that. We call that camouflage.
They never asked me. Never asked me. They're not working. It was 2 little tiny provisions. I had a 31-page bill, Mike. It was 2 little tiny parts, and it wasn't even the whole thing we had in there.
Right.
So to try to say this is bipartisan, come on, man.
All right. No. I worked both of us up into a frenzy. We're out of time, though. We got to go. Folks, thanks for coming on board and joining us. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return tomorrow. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. I'm starting to think that Juneau is a slaughterhouse or a stockyard. They are slinging so much bullshit down there. I don't even know what to say at this point. This whole thing is insane. I mean, the fact that the Tyndall, that they were basically saying because she's a Christian, she couldn't possibly understand. The character assassination of Bob Griffin by Loki Tobin, who, I don't care what you say, she's despicable. The things that she said on the floor were disgusting. Not just disgusting, but, I mean, actually false. And she
They were
knows
false. Yes.
she knows that nobody can call her on it, right? He can't stand there and defend himself. And she spreads these falsehoods out there as if they're fact in an effort to smear his character and besmirch him. And then the attack on Tyndall was just, I mean, this so much BS is flying around down there. You need a freaking scuba suit.
Said with a smile on your face, Mike, and the lilt of your tongue that just sounds so pleasant and pleasing, right? It's like literally telling you things that are false to your face while smiling. It's unbelievable how some of these people can do this and just look in the mirror at night and go, I'm happy with myself. You just lied about a person. And by the way, I had on my phone, I had a counterpoint for every single one of them, but Senator Hughes stood up and did a good job. And, there was no point at that point to continue talking longer because you could tell where the votes were. You can kind of count and get a feel for it. They were going to shoot him down. And so it was frustrating, though, to watch that some Republicans were voting against, a solid Republican that was trying to make a difference. Well, that was more the frustrating part. I expected the Democrats to vote against a Christian and the conservative. I got it, but I was disappointed some of the Republicans did. Everybody's got their reasons, right? But I was a little frustrated on that one. So, it's just like, but here's what's the funny thing. Talking to him after I called him, I said, "Hey, how's it going, man?" He's like, "I'm good." He was totally fired up. It was not down at all.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, this frees me up to do even more stuff." I'm like, "Well, it's like, be careful what you do because, your unintended consequences for those that shot him down." I mean, he's got his fingers and all kinds of stuff and even more time on his hands now. So I'm like, well, maybe it wasn't a bad thing. And like he said, he's like, well, Dozer, because he used my call sign. He's like, I know I'm doing good and I'm over the target because the closer you are to the target, the more flack you catch.
Yeah.
And he caught a lot of flack.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, by the way, who the governor appoints might be more conservative than me. And I'm like, really? I didn't ask any more questions. So I'm just like,
right.
Ain't that fun? So whatever.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, this whole thing with these people who smile while they slide the knife in. They smile while they slide the knife in. Those people are despicable. There's just no two ways about it. When you character assassinate somebody who has no recourse and you say things like that, or then you impugn people like Tyndale, luckily she got through. But and then, like you said, the fact that these Republicans in the House voted against Bob Griffin and then would not answer questions from the media as to why they voted the way they voted. I've got some questions. I've got some real questions on this.
It's disappointing, Mike. People have their reasons and they're probably, they're valid and they're, for what they're looking at. It's fine. I'm just saying for me, I was disappointed because I was hoping that Republicans would be a little more partisan on this one and put somebody in that really is trying to fight for that counter voice of conservative values, homeschoolers, charter schools, et cetera, because we don't have enough of that. As far as supporting it and on the school boards and certainly NEA and across the state. And I really had to laugh about the lobbying. He was lobbying so what you're telling me is all of the elected school board members there, Senator,
right,
from across the state that came into my office lobbying, we should get rid of all them too. They were all being dishonest, untruthful, because I had a whole lot of school board members that are elected officials coming to my office lobbying me. And you're telling me that because Mr. Griffin was lobbying, that's a problem? Interesting comment you had there. I may even talk about that in a special order. I guess, if school board members lobbying us, that's a bad thing. So we should shut down all school board members from lobbying.
Well, and the administrative restriction is not against lobbying or advocating. It's against getting paid for it. That's the thing. He's not a paid lobbyist.
And he's all volunteer.
He was advocating for a position. Somebody just said who? The people in the Republican Party who voted against it in the House were Julie Colomb, Will Stapp, Louise Stutz, no surprise there, Jesse Sumner, Stanley Wright, and Thomas Baker. Those are the people that voted against it. Those are the Republicans in the House that voted against it, and that's 6. That would have pushed it right up to the threshold of 30-30, and then somebody else would have had to step over the line on the other side, on the Senate side, to make it work. But, I mean, it's there. Again, you guys are all better people than I am because I would be throat punching the hell out of people over stuff like this kind of assassination from the bench, so to speak. The bully pulpit.
I understand, Mike. It's very frustrating. I'm just trying to work within it. And like I said, I haven't had a chance to talk to them and ask them. I'm sure they have reasons. And it is what it is. It's just frustrating. Again, mean to call people out individually because they may have a reason why that, that something happened, and I'd have to ask them to understand it. Maybe you can get them on the program and talk to them about it. But it's just frustrating to watch another good advocate for the right side of the political spectrum that's trying to bring that voice, to the school system, and watch him be lied about and watch his character be assassinated and get shot down when I know that he's trying and his heart's in the right place. And that's all we can ask for these people. Same thing about Barbara Tyndall. I'm glad she made it. I was worried they were going to shoot her down, kind of trying to say the same thing about it. But she's such a nice lady. They just couldn't. They would have been. I think they would have turned votes away from the no votes if they had been a little more negative about her, like they were about a guy. Right? Oh, it's easy to be harsh about a guy. That's aggressive out there trying to.
Right.
Make his points and do what. He's a more aggressive character. I think, from what I understand, at least Barbara's a much nicer lady, just a really nice lady. So it's hard to assassinate her character without making yourself look really bad. So I think they were just more careful about it. But the whole anti-Christian thing is like, wow, that was shocking to me. My jaw hit the ground. I'm like, seriously? Here? Wow. So,
Yeah.
like I said, it's kind of like attack, kind of like voting no on Mike McCarr. I'm like, you do know the guy's got money in his own radio show, right?
Right. Right. Good
maybe
luck.
You should vote on this before you go against that guy, because he's got resources to, point this stuff out and reach a lot of people.
Yeah.
So
well,
anyway,
we'll see what happens with it. But it's just, again,
like I said, Mike, there is a way to prevent this craziness next year. Republicans stick together, and we can actually have control of the Senate, and we won't have this craziness anymore. Just saying.
Nothing should surprise me anymore, but even today, I'm still surprised by the behavior and the character of some of our legislators. All right, Mike Shower, thank you, my friend. As always, it's good to talk with you. Thanks for coming on board and joining us today.
See you next week.
All right, next week, final day of the legislative session. We'll get that final recap. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Folks, we're out of time. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Don't forget to like the program. Don't forget to share this show today. If you want more people to hear about the madness that is the long trail versus the clean drinking water, the character assassination of Bob Griffin, the anti-Christian sentiment in the legislature, good Lord. I want, more people need to know about this. Share it wherever you are. Share it with your friends. Check out the podcast, available wherever you find good podcasts, but Spotify is probably the best. Go out there, check it out. And don't forget the Common Sense Corps if you want to help support the show right here. Patreon.com/Michael Duke Show. All right, we're out of time. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.